Hello, hello. How we doing? How we doing, my friends, my family, Muppeteers? What do you call them? I don't. What do people usually do? I need to work on my lingo for being a cult leader. I mean uh, what's what's it called? Um, whatever it's called. Anyway, smash the like button. Share, um, link, retweet, repost, do everything. Do everything you can. New fab tweet about. Loved your Into the Last Week or So top podcast. Thank you, Danny. New tweet about Napoli and Garnacho. That is. Oh shit. Um. Oh, I see. Not. It's not really. It's just we'd have to drop our price. Well, that's probably not gonna happen. I'm trying to not let myself get thrown off by people telling me my mic is quiet today because it's just one person. I'm trying not to get one guide. I know that's a thing. Getting one guide when one guy says something and then everybody and then someone thinks that it's everybody. I gotta not get thrown off. How are we doing? We doing well otherwise? See a lot of familiar faces. Do I read or post on Red Cafe? No, I do not. I never did on Red Cafe, or anywhere else besides Reddit, and then I left that because the forums are any online forum is rough. I mean, um, any online forum is just not my thing these days. Why does it say no data? Am I cut out or hold on? Mic's too loud. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Yeah, we started on Reddit and it I mean that place was was fun. It was a lot of fun. But then it was not fun. Um Someone from Muppeteers did then. I have no idea. It wasn't me. I never went on Red Cafe like ever. Um There's a couple online forums. I don't remember. There's one that's very private and one that isn't, and I'm not on either of those. Um, yeah. Quit trolling me. Um, anyway, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. I can see my microphone levels on my Streamlabs there, and I know that it's fine. Okay? I know that it's fine. You're distracting me. So what happens with the Champions League, by the way? Everything starts in an hour? That's how it is? Every single game, like all 19 games start in 1 hour or something like that? Is that how it works? I wanted to time it hopefully well that I'm not necessarily interrupting every game, but everything in an hour, right? We have a lot to discuss still, which I figured would be this week with the, you know, with everything happening, everything coming to a close on the transfer window and what else United might do during it. And there's still business to be done. There's still business to be done. Yeah, there is still business to be done. So, what are we going to discuss today? What have I got? Oh, I don't know if I set the right thing up for this. It's got the wrong overlay. It's got the wrong overlay. Hold on. There we go. There it is. I've got the right overlay now. I've got the right one. Just making sure I'm all good. I'm all set. All right, cool. We can see the right one. Anyway, let's get to it then. Yeah, I just swapped it to the new one. We should be good now. So we'll talk about Tell. He's on the list of things to discuss for today. We will get to him. We will get to him. So number one is Dorgu. I want to talk about Dorgu in particular. Yes, we will look at where Tell might play and how he kind of ties into the overall strategy of what we are approaching. On Dorgu, what did I want to say on Dorgu? Why did I have notes to talk about? This guy actually kind of ties in the first and second point here, okay? Which is that I want to make a couple of things very, very clear in terms of signings, because I've seen a little bit of talk like, wait, I thought we weren't doing like manager-led recruitment, things like that before, and how do I get myself in the right spot? There we go. And that's all totally correct. We're not doing manager-led recruitment, but you have to understand what that actually means and how players like Dorgu fit into this. They have a way of playing that they want. Every manager has variation in formations, things like that. Let's go back to Thomas Tuchel. If they built a squad out for Amorim, Thomas Tuchel could come in and play the same squad and practically the same formation. There are a lot of overlaps between many managers in terms of how they play and how they can use different players, so long as you have the core concepts correct and as long as you hire the right type of manager as well. The main issue that United have had over the years is you sign someone like Dorgu, who's an athletic, more attacking, left-footed wingback, and then you go to a manager that doesn't use wingbacks at all, doesn't use attacking fullbacks, completely doesn't, prefers center backs at left back. You'd go into that kind of stuff, right? That's how bad it has been, the way that we've kind of bounced back and forth from managers. You go to things that are completely different from one to the other. It's not an issue. They have a stylistic way of doing it. Right. They built a Klopp team, and then Liverpool got a slot in there to fit because they looked at him and said, yeah, this guy would fit a lot of our players. That's why he's been able to come right in, because he can play the same thing and then just adjust some of it tactically to his own. Amorim's thing isn't, to me, that uncommon, especially in modern football, especially with young up-and-coming managers as well. We see a lot of managers out there that play not just three at the back, but a very similar thing with attacking fullbacks, stuff like that. I mean, quite honestly, just going to say it like bluntly, I'll just use it as an example, okay? Like, you could take a Pochettino team and put him into a team that uses wingbacks, and he would be fine. Sure, he would shift it from a 3 to a 4, but you would just move one of those guys up into the midfield. You'd still play with a 2 in the midfield, and you'd use attacking wingback. You'd use very attacking fullbacks, because that's what he does, right? So there's a lot of things that where there's overlap, for example, but you got guys like, there's a lot of managers out there, Kieran McKenna, up and coming managers, and then you have your more pragmatic ones like Tuchel, like these kinds of guys that would kind of fit into whatever you're building. So it's not like that. What the manager is there to do, though, and where they're always, or head coach, because I think even though too much has been made of that title, the head coach, what they want to do is, and what they are encouraged to do in this new setup that we have, and it is a new setup, is look at the team and assess which players are good enough and which players fit and which players they feel can have value. And I only want Tell on things. Let me look at that tweet really fast, just to see what he said. Yeah. That makes sense. We do. Yeah, he did use a back 3 even at times. You're correct, Pochettino. But there's a lot of managers who have that flexibility. The difference is you go from like Jose to Oli. Now, Jose to Oli was not that different, especially kind of late stage Jose, sit deep, hit on the counter. It's actually why it kind of worked out in the beginning for Oli a little bit. in some respects. But then you go from Ollie sit deep counter to Ten Hag, it's a mess. You go from Louis van Gaal to Jose. Like, these things are so different that it's not even funny, right? They're so different that it's not even funny. So we will see what happens with that. LVG to Mourinho is a better example of the bouncing kind of nature. And then Louis van Gaal didn't, not that we really had a squad at that point, but we could have built and continued. And then after Ollie to Ten Hag was really bad, because at that time you would have wanted to go for someone like, again Pochettino stylistically would have fit the team a whole lot better at that point in time. But there was other options too, mind you, that would have fit if you wanted to go that way. But it was like each time, restarting. So this is the first instance. So signing a guy like Dorgu, any concerns over will he fit the next guy? Yes, because it supersedes the next guy. It supersedes the current guy. It's building, a team, and then it's also building a team based on certain athletic profiles that matter. Because that is a club level kind of decision to look at it and say, we want a team that's full of physicality. You look at, and I'm not saying everybody doesn't, but you look at Arsenal, there's different variations in the team they built, but they obviously wanted to sign a lot of tall players too. Not all, but they definitely focused on building a very big team. You look at Liverpool, they didn't so much focus on height as much at all times, especially in the midfield, but they certainly focused on getting players who could run their fucking ass off and play very physical in the midfield and around, right? There were athletic profiles that they picked, guys like McAllister and such that they picked in the midfield, where one might have thought, I don't exactly know how they fit at all times, technically, but they did, because it fits really well. And they've made it work with players who have incredible work rates and engines, right? And that's what they got a lot out of, guys like Henderson and all of that before them weren't really viewed in the same way. So there's physical profiles, there's athletic profiles, there's all things like that go into it that are well beyond even just a manager, but that fit a club ethos that they want to be. And Szoboszlai, a lot of those players might not be that great in some other settings for sure, but they are at Liverpool. And I think ours, does have a little bit of it's been lacking the United kind of ethos a little bit, which is in speed and athleticism, pace and power. Like Amorim said, we're missing up front, getting some physical monsters in there, right? Not just pace, but some real physicality into the team that has been seriously lacking, and some hard-nosed football. I think that's an American term, but either way, that's what's kind of wanted. So Dorgu fits this very, very well on a physical basis. So does Diego Leon, and so do the players that we're looking at. And then it's also the age, right? It's also the age. Is they want to be young. They want a team that's young, because that's a commitment to the rebuild. They want a team that is young on average, that has the room to grow. But that also, there's a lot of financial reasons to that, but that has room to grow rather than in the decline. We need to be fast. We need to grow. We need to get players that are going to be getting better. So we're not always trying to arrest the decline, but enhance the growth. Okay. Hilariously, Rashford and Højlund are pace and power players. They are, but unfortunately, Rashford has, I think, slowed down a little bit in the recent times with some of maybe injuries or things like that, or overload or whatever it may be. He slowed down a little bit too, aside from all the other issues. But the other issues are all more tangible than that. But regardless, that's what we're at. And then, being able to grow. We're all getting on that, on being able to grow and improve. And that's a big part of Dorgu. That's a big part of bringing him in. Again, it's been highlighted that he's wanted for a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about Dorgelis and Tell as we kind of get forward into it in the future. But let's talk about Ruben Amorim, because there was a story a little bit recently. I don't know if it was so much of a story of a passing line, that I can tell you is not the case, about him being frustrated with the club or with management or with something with regards to transfers and all that. And that's not true. Ruben Amorim is the only frustration he has is that it's not like he expected it to go much better, but he is frustrated at certain times at just how bad it's been. I think I know he expected to just for them to be a little bit better. The players that he was coming into to the work that he was coming into to be a little bit better, or it to be a little bit quicker. And I think some of that just comes down to some of the excess issues that have come up that he's had to deal with since coming in. Things like pretty much immediately Shaw being injured, Mount being injured again, and the Rashford situation on top of that being things that have reduced the amount of options that he had before. Even for when he signed on, he had those 3 extra options available that he liked all of them, and there is different, and that has, gone down. That's all he's really been frustrated with. Not with the ownership, not with the management, not with the transfer window. He walked in entirely eyes open and has the absolute full backing of the ownership, the management, the board, of everybody to do exactly what he's doing and to suffer in the way that he keeps saying that we're going to suffer. He has a complete wherewithal to do what he's doing right now and to have us be pretty shit. Okay, at the moment, he has that. He has that. Okay, he has that acceptability. He has that. There's no concern on any of that. So, that's all good. And he also knew it was going to be extremely financially tight come January. He knew that. He knew that he wasn't going to, but that was a part of him essentially, which I said at the beginning, getting pretty much a free hit from everybody involved. They back him fully. There's actually an enormous amount of admiration for him because essentially it's recognized that to some degree he's dragging his reputation a little bit by taking the club on in the position that it's in. You see things like he's never lost more than 6 games. He's already lost 6 at United, right? They know, and he knows that he's going to have to deal with where he came into a Sporting situation, improved them instantly, won them the league like right away, and has done a whole bunch of shit successfully, and it's never really been bad, to running through worse than he's been in his entire career as a coach in terms of results at United. And there's a lot of admiration in it for that, for him being willing to do that, for his career. And so, of course, he gets pretty much unlimited backing in that respect to be able to do what he needs to do. And part of that as well is, and the main task, if you go back to my videos in November, my main task, as I said, ahead of the January window, was to assess the squad and see who doesn't fit. If you go back, that's what I said his main job was, and that can change, everything. The difference is, Sean, Ten Hag got 200 and something million to spend, and then he lost 2 games, and he got, total he lost 2, not before he lost those 2 games, but he got 70, 80 million, and then he got, and a few signings, and then he got another 150 million after losing just 2 games and a full preseason. Amorim doesn't get any of that. He doesn't get any of that to try and turn things around. Ten Hag got all of those, and to be fair, by the end of his first season, his reputation was better. That his reputation was better than when he joined, because we won a trophy, right? Yes, we won a trophy, and we got back into good positions, into Champions League and all of that. He because he was able to get those things he wanted. Despite it being hugely detrimental to us in the long run, he was able to get that. Amorim doesn't get those tools. He doesn't get a 200 million window. He doesn't get transfers when 2 players get injured or we lose a couple of games or we're suffering a little bit. Oh boy. Thank you for the donation, Tubby Saber. There is a big difference, right? But I'm talking about that first season. Ten Hag got a lot of tools when he came in order to improve himself. Amorim's coming in, and to the end of the season, at most, we're struggling, but we get a left back, thankfully. But that's only really to replace losing Shaw and losing, other players, and then maybe a forward, but that might come at the cost of losing Rashford or Garnacho. He's not going to end the season with a team stronger than when he joined, right? Than when he signed on. So it's a lot more risk for Ruben, in general. Ruben says here, I said I will not put any player that doesn't give the maximum. I did not say I will not play Marcus Rashford. We are a better team with Marcus Rashford. I know that, but until the right moment, I won't change my mind. So just for what it's worth, those quotes have just come out from him on this. I haven't commented much on it because in my mind, I felt the comments were harsh, but also potentially a bit out of context, which tends to happen when someone's getting badgered by the press constantly after every game. He says, the situation is the same for every player. My sentence was that I wouldn't put any player that doesn't get the maximum. I didn't say only Marcus Rashford. We're a better team with him. That's clear. But until the right moment, I won't change my mind. So it's a bit of a different statement. Different, but the same, but different. So anyway, that's actually just now, some quotes from him. And I do think that's important because, anyway, I think people ran a bit far with that. It's not a backtrack. It's just more accurately laying things down. But specifically saying we're a better team with Marcus Rashford, his point is Rashford is a good player. But there's issues that he wants to sort out, or he wouldn't have him in the team. But what Ornstein also confirmed there, actually we're going to get to that later, was again that it was, it wasn't Rashford first asking to leave. Okay. It was not Rashford first asking to leave. Ornstein confirmed that as well. Anyway, it does. We'll get to that. But Amorim has the full backing of the club to make the decision, to make the decisions that he wants to make and that he needs to make as well. So moving forward to what we really want to talk about is Dorgu and Tell. Now, I mean, I've explained the issues for quite a while between Rashford and the club and things like that. I've explained it on a number of occasions. I also explained yesterday, why is it? Okay, I'm gonna bring this up one more time, and this is to me a very valid issue, regardless of everything else. It is a very, very valued issue, a very real issue. When Amorim sat down in December after dropping a couple of players, and when he met with players to talk about their place in his team and who might be moving in January and all of that, right? When he did that, there was more than one player who was for sale. None of that went out. Only it went out that Marcus Rashford would be sold in January. Only on Marcus Rashford, okay? And this was the night after a game that he wasn't even involved in, okay? This is the night after a game that he wasn't even involved in. Neither was Garnacho, okay? But it only went out about Rashford. Now, we know for a fact that Garnacho and his people, as well as United, had already spoken to Chelsea in December as well about him potentially moving. If you look at Fabrizio Romano, what he said about the Nkunku deal was that it was first approached in December. So Rashford was not the only one. So why is it just him that gets targeted in the media like that? Why is it just him? Why is that what happens? Why is it getting leaked by someone at the club to specific media who also leaked something again yesterday that it's specifically him? Regardless of your thoughts of him, why is it just him getting targeted like that? When there was that conversation and that planning was occurring with at least 3 other players, why is it just him that gets that? That's an issue that is not about Marcus Rashford, because whatever the decision about Rashford, Amorim, all of that, I back him as well. It's not that. It's why is that happening at the club, that is happening? And then why is another story getting leaked the day before, about that? It has nothing to do with Rashford. It has everything to do with why he's getting targeted by certain leaks from the club. and that has been happening for a long time. And that doesn't have any bearing on whether he this or he that or anything, because Ornstein as well confirmed that it was initiated by the club, not by Rashford. So it came before his interview with Henry Winter. And his interview with Henry Winter, he was only bringing those points up because he was specifically being asked about the stories that came out when he was not even in the team saying that he would be sold. Okay? That interview was planned for sure as a school charity event that he does all the time with a journalist who he's close to. Okay? And that's fine, whether you like that or not, that's okay. But Winter specifically asked him about the stories that had come out. It wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened without those stories coming out. That has nothing to do with, again, this is a totally separate issue to whether he's playing well enough or whether he's training well enough, any of that stuff. It's a separate issue. I'm talking specifically about targeted leaks that occur, okay? And he's not the only one this has happened to over the years, because there have been other players. There was a point where Maguire was getting it too a few years back, where there was some weird stuff going out about him and all of that. There was a whole bunch of things. It happens to certain players, but it continues to. There's something very, very weird about that bothers me, and that has been happening for some time, regardless of any of the other issues. And you have to be able to separate those things out to look at them logically. I think it's a problem because I don't think it's acceptable for there to be anyone in the club that is leaking stuff to media to target players that they like or don't like. It doesn't matter. Today you can say it's Rashford. Tomorrow it can be somebody else that you do like, whether you like them or not, because it's personal. It's quite obviously personal. It's quite obviously someone that has an issue. So you can justify it in any way, but it's specifically, that's the type of thing that shouldn't be happening at United either way, no matter what. That shouldn't be happening. So that's a topic I don't like. Now I note that the media have pretty heavily been cut off in January, by the way. I mean, I found it kind of funny when we were talking about Dorgu yesterday and that we were pressing on it. And I'm not going to make, I'm not, let's open the floor to wild accusations. Yeah. When we were, doing all of that, and Fabrizio's giving the here we go, it took 24 hours for anybody in English media to catch up practically. The club aren't giving shit out. The club aren't giving anything out. It took like 4 days between Fabrizio's here we go on Anthony for it to be acknowledged that it was actually a done deal by people at the club. Run a number one. I take your point on specific leaks, but it's also true that Rashford, by his answer in the interview, didn't have himself. 100% agreed. 100% agreed. 100%. 100% agreed. Yeah, I don't particularly buy the way that was framed, Boilo. I don't particularly buy that. Solskjaer gave Rashford a new contract. So did Ten Hag. So how big of a problem could they have had with his attitude? They both gave him bumper contracts. Okay. But it doesn't matter. What's now is now, and that's what's important. But you're correct, number one, runner. Thank you for the donation. It's that I don't disagree with. Again, to me, it's a separate issue. I think that everything in its current state and how Amorim is dealing with it is fine and totally his call, totally up to him. He has every right to it. It's a separate issue to me because it's a way that things happen that's unacceptable. When media can't even find out anybody who we're signing, anyone who we're looking at, how are they getting stories like the manager isn't speaking to a player anymore, right? Because the club are not giving anything out, right? That's on purpose. And where's the story saying he told, Garnacho, you don't fit in my team? Why doesn't that come out? Why doesn't that come out? because it could. Just as easily, someone could write that story, but they won't. And then it gets played out like the club is trying to force a player out, which has not been the case. So, there's something kind of odd about the whole thing to me. I have a problem with it in general. Okay, I have a problem with it in general. Okay, I just do, and it doesn't matter what the player is when it becomes targeted. There were stories about stuff like, from private conversations between Bruno and Rashford last year. Like, how the hell does that kind of stuff get leaked? You know what I mean? Like, what the hell? Who's doing that and why? That's the stuff that's unacceptable. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the stuff that is not okay when those types of things are starting to come out. Especially because I think it's pretty obvious that United have cut down heavily on the stories and things that they give out to media in January. I think it's real obvious. But let me get off my soapbox on this. Okay, it's just an issue. It's a personal issue that bothers me. It's a personal issue that bothers me that actually has very little to do with the player specifically and more to do with the things that happen. Okay. At this club. But let's talk about Dorgu and Tell in particular. All right, let me pull this up here. Sorry, I always get off my my soapbox. I always get on my anyway, it is what it is. I am who I am. You're gonna have to deal with it. There's things that I feel strongly about and things that I don't. This is one of them. So I just want to talk about Angie. James, sorry for bringing this up now, but why are we considering Dorgu as a nailed-on starter? Is he more of a young, talented prospect? Because that's why we signed him in January. We wouldn't have signed him in January for that reason. We would have signed him in summer if it was a prospect approach, like Diego Leon. Because he was likely available for a bit less. We could have signed him and loaned him back and gotten a better deal on it. He's being brought in, expected to come in. I want to first talk a little bit about why these players and fit, and it also ties into Dorgu. So this is Tell. If you don't know what kind of player he is, there's some quotes from him where he says left forward. That's his position. He's played in a number of different positions across the board. But if you look at kind of where he plays, I want you to specifically note this area that I'm circling with my mouse here. Okay. This area here specifically, not in the box deep here, but right here, because there's a subtle difference in this in terms of fit, and why I think Tell is such a perfect fit in this position, comparatively. His best position is in between wingers, right? You have to think about where do they operate. He operates probably a little bit closer to Rashford stylistically than he does to Garnacho, who prefers to play quite wide. Tell likes to play a little more in narrow, okay? And he likes to play right in that left 10, not sitting on a touchline, but moving in the box. And what that does for you as well, if you think about him playing with someone like Alphonso Davies at Bayern at left back, is opens this space up for your left back to attack the box. So I want to show that. That's where he kind of operates. I want to show something interesting about Dorgu. You can see kind of the same thing, even though he starts quite a bit wider and he does play on both sides. Once again, top of the box. This tends to be where he comes in and approaches and takes the area. That's a player who comes in, gets and allows space for an overlap. Okay, allows space for an overlap. When we look at Garnacho in terms of the fit stylistically, this is where he doesn't really fit with an overlapping fullback and never really has. Even though overall the areas are not that different, where Garnacho attacks the box is in the spaces where you would generally have a fullback overlapping and cutting in, right? These are where Garnacho tends to operate. That's in the Europa League. It's even, I think, a little bit more apparent in the Premier League. You can see this is like basically a wingback in a 5. This is basically a wingback's depth chart, heat chart. That's why I'm still kind of curious as to why we wouldn't just play Garnacho at wingback to me. Because stylistically, he doesn't really operate in these central areas closer to the middle, but makes the runs that a wingback would make. There's no space for a wingback to play alongside Garnacho. They have to be cutting inside. They have to. There's just no space for him. You can see like the running pattern, right? It's out wide and then cutting in really deep versus out wide, cutting in narrow, and allowing for space on the outside. So, that's what's sort of a little bit strange to me. And so when I look at a Dorgu, obviously he's playing in a in a team that doesn't get the ball up much, but and he's played on both sides, but he's going to be flexible. We'll see what happens, but you can kind of see on his map last year wide, right? He sits wide. He's not really playing in the middle. He's playing wide as a wingback. And that tends to be his strength. I mean, it would kind of make sense. I mean, I don't know where else. We don't have enough data points to point to too much else, but he's a wide player. When you look at him when he plays on like the right wing, he sits really wide too. So, yeah, what do you think about Amorim only wanting left-footed wingbacks? Well, Maxi Araujo remind me because I messed this up and then I confused myself. He used Maxi Araujo at Sporting as a right wing back. I want to as a left wing back who's right-footed. I want to say I got really mixed up in a video a long time ago on this, and since then I get confused every single time. But I believe he's used a right footer on the left and a left footer on the right before, and in that instance inverted. But one of the changes he specifically made this season at Sporting was, and I covered this when he first joined, is that when he was playing before, those wingers would be wide, and a lot of times his wingbacks would come in narrow. Is Araujo left-footed? Okay, Araujo is left. Yeah, Araujo was playing against City. Araujo is left-footed. I think he is. So he would play with these wingbacks who would come in narrow, and the wingers would be wide. But what was the problem with that? He is a left footer. Okay, good. So he's playing with left footers on both sides this season. That makes sense. Good. He was playing with left footers on both sides this season. Yeah. The wingers would be wide. Fullbacks would often be coming inside. What was the problem with that? Sporting were really bad against the counter. They were really bad against the counter for some of the same reasons we were when we were inverting Dallo and then exposing Lissandro on the left. They had Inacio over there. He's really similar to Lissandro, but the wingers would sit wide, the fullbacks would come in, and they would get exposed on the counter, Sporting, for quite a while under Amorim as one of their main weaknesses. This season specifically, before joining us, the biggest adjustment that he made was moving his forwards narrow and keeping the wingbacks wider, especially in the final third, okay? Even though you have a left footer on the right, they wouldn't be necessarily coming all the way across. They'd usually come across when the ball's on the other side, but on that side they would stay. So yeah, they changed quite a bit there to specifically negate that, and they ended up having like the best defensive record under him they've ever had. That was an adjustment that he made about having narrow forwards and wide wing backs, okay? So he's been doing that whenever he can here, right? And that's where the question of Garnacho is, because he's a wide player. Ahmad, when he's in, Ahmad comes across, does kind of everything. So it's a little harder to judge Ahmad because he does virtually everything. But, we know that, yeah, I mean, because he plays in both positions, so it makes it a little bit harder to measure Ahmad, because he plays at the top of the box and he plays in the box depending on which position that he's in. He does it in different ways. So there's different approaches that we can take to this, but they're all good. They're a narrow left-sided forward fits really well, and that works. Ragnar, after the Amorim quote on Rashi, any chance he stays? Would love him to stay, sell Garnacho, and get Tell thoughts. That's probably going to be unpopular as an opinion, but look, everything is everything is as it is for now, and the future is a mystery. But it all depends on them. I think Rashford will end up going on loan. I still believe that he will end up going on loan before the end of the window. Okay, I still believe he will. We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk. We'll talk about the loans. We'll talk about the options now for Dorgu. Let's get to a few more details. I wanted to show this as well, just on Tell. He's the blue. Okay, the blue on this. He's the blue on this, and you can see he's more similar to Ahmad in the way that he plays. A lot of creativity in his game, a lot of passing in his game as well. He's also a great goal threat. Statistically, he's a great goal threat. He's a lot of things. This is last season, right, where we're getting at least a decent chunk of minutes. That's the data that's available. So you can see why he's much more well-rounded, especially in the final third in terms of his competence. Okay, and the final third is there. He plays closer to the goal, creates chances, scores goals, non-penalty goals. That's what this is. NPG is non-penalty goals. Okay, so that's all. It says it right here. Non-penalty goals. So it's good stuff. He's good, really good across the board. Again, he would fit it pretty dramatically into here. He would fit it really, really well. He's just, I look at him like, I probably myself look at him like, again, just because he's a player, like I look at him close to how Rashford performed at his best, in terms of his style anyway. He's closer to that than he is to like how Garnacho plays more narrow, plays more direct, but also is a good creator, a good dribbler. Lots of stuff that he does is very good. So he's a good player. And he's been a striker too. Obviously, Dorgu is a different type of option. The thing is we need multiple forwards, very likely. So I wouldn't get super worried about anything. Tells the situation with Dorgu. Let's just cover that really quickly. You might have seen this as well from the Academy scoop that I do know this is correct. He linked that. I retweeted his post as well because he has some info in there that I do know is true as well and aligns well with mine. Is that we did make that approach for Dorgu during this window. We have been interested in him, but as my understanding was, the price that Salzburg were asking for, given our priorities in this window and the need and want to get a left wing back in Dorgu and what we were going to spend there, just too much. Not a player. I don't think he's a player we may not come back for. We didn't walk away because we're not interested. We walked away because we really just couldn't afford it right now. And maybe the price was too high too, all things considered. It's January, but we weren't looking to spend that much money on him in January, but we could be back in summer for Dorgu, barring a sale and coming back, then yeah, I feel we need to add more reliable experienced players. That too, but maybe not that many. So he is for sure someone that we could come back for later on. As it goes with Tell in particular, I don't know the exact price, but I'm thinking it was in the range of 30 or so, which just means it's too much right now. And maybe too much later. We want to see how he performs over the course of the season to see if he's worth that, if that's a good value for him. Now, as I shared yesterday, United were still assessing different forward options. We were still assessing forward options. We're still assessing different plans that we could do. If we sold Garnacho, there's plans that are getting harder and harder to execute in terms of buying a player because we're running out of time. Okay, because we are running out of time, and getting a permanent player in of note is probably hard even now. Even if we tried today, it would probably be hard to get someone in. We're just running out of time. But we've had some options in terms of potential backups. Now, one of the reasons Tell is very much of interest and is a very good option here is because, unlike maybe some other options, he's an absolute top talent. Okay, he's an absolute top talent that there's a lot less doubt on. That is a very, very good player, right? And he's a player where you're not downgrading from anybody, frankly. I mean, he's closer to Ahmad than anybody else. You wouldn't be downgrading if he was in your team. Even if you let Rashford and Garnacho go, you wouldn't be downgrading to get talent to your team, quite frankly. So it does not rule out, we're not ruling out Garnacho leaving as of yet. It's the clock is ticking. Now, we want a loan because we cannot buy him now. I think that there's still always the risk of a player coming in that we don't necessarily want to pay. We can't pay at the moment, and I think that it's going to be really tough to get a permanent deal done at this point in time. So we don't want to buy him now. It's very, very unlikely we buy him now. Again, it's also very unlikely. It's getting less and less likely that we sell Garnacho, but it's not off the table as of yet. But I will say, again, when we were talking about loan players before, I've said this since the start of the window and before that per my understanding, they're more interested in looking at loan players that they would have maybe interest in buying in the future, okay? That we would maybe have interest in buying in the future. And there are a couple of factors that play into this, and whether on what happens here, right? Because if we could get him with an option as well, then it might be considered. I believe it's still being considered, but this is where it's a bit dependent on some of the outs and things like that happen. Okay, and the situations with Garnacho, the situations with Rashford, and our options in there. Sometimes because options are not necessarily always available, if you get me. Like there are different ideas. There are different things with options. Options can have different deadlines, stuff like that. United kind of want to know where they stand to decide whether they're going to, whether they'd want to have an option or whether it would be worth negotiating an option or whether they even really could negotiate an option. So they want to kind of see where they stand on that. They want to make sure he's interested as well, because what's the point of negotiating an option if Tel doesn't want to stay into summer, right? And if he's not open to it, if you know what I mean, like even if he's open to it, it doesn't mean for sure we get an option, but you'd want to make sure he's open to it before you spend the time negotiating an option in a deal and stuff like that, right? You'd want to know that first before you get into negotiations, whether the player was willing to join you long term or not. And then that might also affect whether you actually move forward with the deal. If they're not open at all, do you do the loan to just have him for 6 months? I know that there's good reports saying he's interested in us and wants us. That's a good sign. But is that just for now? Or does that also mean he would consider joining in summer? And what would be his expectations at that time? What would be his wage asks at that time? What would be all of those things at that time? We'd want to understand those before we approach Bayern, because it could change it it changes our view on the potential loan, if you know what I'm saying. Like it does change the view on a potential loan. There's no guarantees what gets in there, but we want to understand all of that first, because hopefully, I would say if we do take him on loan, we would be able to negotiate an option in there. Or something that allows us to get it in summer, because if he was doing really well, if he did really, really well for us, we don't want to go back to Bayern and then they ask for 80 million when they'd sell him for 40 if you were getting an option now, or 50 if you were getting an option now, right? That's a potential, downside of it, where he's played really well for us and it's like, oh, well, of course you're going to buy him, so we're going to rack that fee up to ridiculous amounts. So there's a risk in this situation. if we don't do an option and he performs really well, because it is a position of need. It is a position of need in there. I don't know that we have to loan anybody to get him in. It only costs us about $2 million. Okay. I know we are looking at our outs and things like that to balance the books and everything, but nobody's actually technically said we have to loan someone else out to be able to afford a loan for him. Based on the deal we got for Dorgu, we probably could afford Tell just. It would be very tight. We probably could afford a straight loan for him, given the wages that he's on for 6 months. We probably could. Well, it's actually 5, so it's actually even a little less because January's almost over. So I believe we could either way. The fact that we're looking at our outs and things like that, again, is more about understanding our overall situation and deciding what we want to do and what options we might have on the table. Let's go back to this thing really quick here, because this is where it gets really, to me, very, very interesting overall, right? We were kind of talking about this yesterday. Some of this is coming together. And again, we've got other potential forward options too. That's the other reason that we haven't done anything on this as of quite yet in terms of like formally doing anything, because we do have some other forward options as well that we'd have to consider. Does obligation? Yes, obligations are counted usually immediately depending on the conditions, but we probably can't do an obligation. If we look at let's go to this one first. If we look at this, you can see we kind of went over this yesterday where we for sure have issues. We don't know if we have a top striker. We need options on the right, potentially the left, and we need probably a right wing back, and we need a midfielder. Well, if we get Tell, firstly, he could play potentially in all 3 spots, but I would say left and center is probably his more accurate positions, left and center. So he gives you an option at striker, even in games. Like you could play him with Bruno and Ahmad at times. You could. Yeah, keeper is a 1 in, 1 out. I know we need a keeper, but we do. And you can play him off the left, which could give you Bruno on the right. So either way, it gives you quite a bit of flexibility there. So he can play in all 3 spots. Yeah, I understand. And so even if he's more this, he can play in both. That gives you quite a lot of flexibility. That gives you quite a lot of flexibility there. And then Dorgu does as well, who plays very much as well off of the right. Yeah, but it is really interesting because if we go to this and we add this in as a player, let's put him in our left 10 position here. Oops. We can put him in here and he kind of plays across the front 3. You know, between these 2 players and Dibbling, you could potentially solve the entire attack. I'm not saying you would do it, but if you go for Tell and a striker, your attack is solved, right? So it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting idea. We'll see where we get with all of this. But it's another name to add to our list of potential attackers that we could bring in, and you'd have to think about signing him permanently, because why not? You know, if you got Tell in here, even if Garnacho was sold, for example, just to do this, you have a player who can cover both sides. For example, you could have a player who can cover both sides. You get a striker in summer and Tell, let's just say you did this. Well, that's your attack sorted. And you haven't actually spent anything. Just to be clear, you know, if you were able to move out Højlund and Garnacho and get Tell and Osimhen, you pretty much have your attack sorted. It's a little bit light, but you have 5 good players for 3 positions. And the reason why I say sorted is because you could also add in, if you signed like Tyler Dibbling or Kenda, well, they can also play in the front line, which gives you more options. So, you know, there's a world where you could do something like this, and this is your team, and you're pretty well set. And Tell would give us almost a test run at that that would help solve a lot of problems if we did end up buying him in summer. So anyway, there's a long-term view of this that makes sense as well as the short-term view. And I think we just want to know where we're at, where we're going, as to, whether we can get something with it. We can't buy him now, and we'll see. We can't buy him now, but we'll see. I think they really want to know, and it will depend on the type of deal that we could approach Bayern with, to get in there. So it's very interesting to me. I'm real interested in this one, and I think that it's got potential. If the player wants to join us, either way, if we can just get a loan done, it would give us really good options for the rest of the year and all of that. On Garnacho and Rashford, like I said, they're still in talks. We kind of did it earlier. We're kind of done it to death. Chelsea are still interested. Napoli are still interested. Chelsea are still interested. Napoli are still interested. There's still some kind of discussions. Napoli are kind of just hoping we fold towards the end of the window. I don't think we will. I think that maybe they've mismeasured this. We're not going to just accept 40 million at the end of the window. I'd be absolutely dumbfounded, but it's not going to happen. They're going to have to come up 10 million pounds at least to get something there. We're still kind of waiting to see if there's anything from Chelsea. I would say give it till tomorrow. And if by end of day tomorrow there's nothing, then that one's probably a bit of a dead prospect. Rashford could come down to the final minutes of the window. He really could. A lot of clubs that he's talking to are really just going to look at it like, why don't we just sweat United out? And given that he can't be in the team, unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation, is they can sweat us out. They can say he's not in the team right now. He's not playing. You've got no usage for him. We're going to sweat you to the end of the window and then get you to cover as much wages as possible. If he's not going to get back in the team, it makes sense for us to do it, even if we have to pay the majority of his wages, because anything is better and him playing is better. So, for now, for summer, for everybody. So I think that's why I think this gets done, because even if we got 75,000 of his wages covered, it's not like it doesn't help us. But the added effect to that is that if he's not going to be in the team, then he's going to be able to play somewhere. And that is very likely to increase his value for summer, because it's at the lowest possible ebb at the moment for pretty obvious reasons. So I do think that one gets done just logically. Rashford gets done somewhere. So logically that gets done. Yeah, logically that happens. I think we could probably do something. We could probably do something about it, about Tell or a loan in, depending on some details, even if nothing happens. But I think we really do want to know where we stand with Garnacho, Rashford, and some other things before we decide what kind of offer to make for Tell, if we're going to. Okay, especially after talking to his people. But we are one of the 7 clubs that are looking at a loan for him, and there's talks about it. So I think tomorrow and Friday will be really, really big for us in these kind of final decisions. The last major thing to talk about is Casemiro. And Malacia we've been willing to let on go for ages. Now that we have Dorgu in, he'll probably go on loan. I mean, he'll probably go on loan. If there's an actual offer for him, if Betis are also interested, he'll probably go on loan. I really don't know much about it. He's been available mostly the whole time. I don't think really we were stopping him from going on loan because of a signing. I think he wasn't going on loan because clubs know we don't really want him to stay, and they're sweating us out towards the end of the window to get a better deal. That's the January window. That's what happens. Teams wait you out and they try to get us the best deal possible. They try to get themselves the best deal at the end of the window. That's January. It is what it is, especially clubs looking to get players that are want away, that are excess to requirements, things like that. Could it help facilitate a move? Sure. I don't know that it has to, but obviously it would help financially. The Casemiro situation to me is bizarre. You're getting reports that he could go to Roma still, but then you're getting reports that he turned down a move already and is waiting for Saudi. But then you had these reports that Saudi were making offers which weren't true, or he would have gone to Saudi. So who knows where this stands at the moment? All I know is there weren't big offers from Saudi for him. And I'm not really hearing much by the way of it being realistic for Saudi to be coming in for him, and they haven't as of yet. They're looking to young players like they're talking now, more younger players. That's kind of the shift. John Duran going there is kind of wild to me. But they're more looking in that vein of attack for their signings. It's kind of wild. He should just go to if Roma are still interested in him, he should go there. But then you're getting some quotes that he's okay with his position at United not being in there and all of that, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of wild. So I don't know what the deal is with Casemiro at this point, but we don't have the offers to have him leave. Maybe something could still happen with Roma in the final days of the window. That's a big one. I doubt we'll be able to sell him now, but ideally he goes somewhere and plays, so it makes it easier because we still have him next year. If he doesn't get sold in summer, we still have him next year. He needs to go play somewhere and have someone make an offer. MLS, is that a possibility? It might be, but nothing substantial. There's potentially interest, but that I've heard of, but nothing of substance as of yet. So yeah, so I don't know what happens here, but it seems kind of odd for him to just sit and stay for the rest of the season not playing. I don't see who that benefits him or anybody. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I really don't. But the reporting is kind of weird. At this point, it seems like Roma or nothing, based on what's out there, barring, again, towards the end, I mean, the last day of the January window, a bunch of crazy shit happens, and you get a bunch of little loans and things like that go flying around. So there's definitely potential. There's definitely potential that, that something comes out of nowhere in the final day of the window, for a loan or something like that. Let's hope that is the case. Let's hope that is the case. For sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, what the hell, Anything else I wanted to discuss today? Yeah, we're not going to talk about Rashford anymore on all of that. Nothing? End it? Yap? I mean, what's there to yap about? What else? I mean, Champions League starts in like 7 minutes. So I feel like people are going to want to get to that. To watching that, right? Selling Collier for 20 million profit, this would be great. Well, yeah, not the worst thing. Sekou Kone. Oh, that's a good point. Any thoughts on us not picking up injuries every week anymore? So I know a lot of you watched me last year and agreed, but I certainly got a lot of heat for suggesting that Ten Hag's training and playing patterns had a lot to do with our injuries, and magically, they do. Since Ruben Amorim has come in, aside from the eternally injured in Shaw and Mason Mount, we're not getting injuries anymore. It's not happening. One of the things I pointed out in the beginning, one of the staff that he brought with has a different view. He's actually went to Liverpool University, I think it was. He's a fitness coach, and he has this whole study he did on busy periods and unbusy periods and all of that, and came to the conclusion that the regularness of the games has nothing to do with injuries. It's about how you train in between that has to do with the injuries. That during busy periods, you simply have to train less to account for it. Who would have thunk it? Instead of doing intensive training all the time. But it's also about style, not playing basketball games, things like that. And Ruben Amorim pays a lot more attention to how his players are doing on the pitch during the 90 minutes. When he sees them lagging, when he sees little things. Like, look at what happened with Yoro and De Ligt this week. Both of them were subbed because of little things. And they didn't get injured. It turned into nothings. Whereas if you continued playing for 15 more minutes, you can end up with a muscle tear very easily by favoring a leg, by doing something like that. So he pays a lot of attention to this. Coaches have a huge impact on huge impact on injuries, and people need to accept it. It's a fact. Coaches have massive effect for so many reasons on the injury levels of players. They just do. If they're setting training, but also how they deal with in-game management. So much to do with that. So yeah, so much. And so I obviously we're never going to be lucky forever, but we got to do it. We've got to do it. It's certainly better. There's enough already to say that it's better. I mean, even just now, it's been 2.5 months, just over 2 months. We've probably had less injuries than we've had in 3, 4, 5 years. But definitely since the last 2, it's been way better. It's been way better. Now, the fitness levels and such obviously need to improve. There's no doubt about that. But that's over time, that's signings, and ideally that's stuff we can work on. In summer, a lot of coaches do massive fitness programs, right? Pochettino, Klopp, a lot of them, they do big fitness programs in summer to get their player, like they run them into the absolute ground in summer on fitness programs. But that stops as soon as the season starts. And so I expect we'll end up that way this summer as well. And that maybe by next year we'll look a little bit fitter too. As on top of players, obviously makes a big difference. Anything else? Let's see. I think that's it. I'm gonna end it there. Got shit to do. You hope you do as well. Enjoy the Champions League. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch Bayern. I'm not particularly super interested in any specific game, but Tell is our closest comparable to a signing right now, so we might as well. I mean, there's jeopardy in that, isn't there? Bayern are in 15th. They haven't technically qualified, have they? City need a win to qualify. There's some games here. That are worth watching. Celtic from Malacia. Okay, interesting. Oh, yeah, I saw that story the other day, Jeff. Harry Mara, United have invited world-renowned track and field coach as a consultant on athletics. Good stuff. Good stuff, that. So hopefully that helps. Stuff like that. Would Bayern let Tell permanently if a big enough offer came in? Yes. Yes, they would. Okay, that's it. I'm going to end it there. Enjoy your day, everybody. I will be back tomorrow morning, and then we will be doing a watch along for the Europa League so that we can win and skip the knockouts as well. But for now, enjoy. If anything happens, I'll go live again. If there's anything particular interest between now and the end of the window, I'll do random lives or videos here and there. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you later.